someone who I truly admire. She is incredible and a person who I don't know why I get nervous, Meg. I don't know why.
Well, it's a good start. Incredible. No one's ever said that to me before, so I'll go with that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Poekoothay. Welcome to Poekoothay podcast. Today, I'm bringing you a very special guest, someone I truly admire. She is an incredible person who worked tirelessly for the community and inspires so many people, including me. Welcome to the podcast, Meg.
Thank you very much, Lo.
First time I met you was in a community workshop that we have with Jamaica.
Yes.
And do you remember I told everyone and you that I can start talking to anyone?
Yes.
Everyone?
Yes.
And then you put me on the spot. No, you don't put me on the spot, but like we had to read something out and like, oh, Le can do it because he can talk to everyone. And I'm like, okay, I won't be say that to anyone.
From memory, you did a really good job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm very honored to have you here.
Thank you very much for inviting me. So, I'm happy to learn about this podcast and the work that you do in the community. And likewise, the first time I met you, I thought, wow, that's a very impressive person and doing lots of good in the community. So I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. Speak to you before. You say you were teaching in Indonesia?
When I was young, my degree that I did at university was teaching. And I always imagined that I would teach for a few years and then go travelling. So as a young person, that's lots of Australians love to travel. But back then, unlike today where we have a shortage of teachers, back then we had lots of teachers and schools were closing down. And so it was very hard to get jobs. And so I thought, what am I going to do now? And Australia had the Australian Volunteers International program, and they had that for new graduate teachers as well. And it's kind of where you volunteered time in a country, maybe like a developing country, to teach or other jobs, and you were paid like a local wage. So you got to live and experience another country for a couple of years. And back then you didn't choose the country, you basically just put your hand up, they interviewed you, they worked out whether you were an appropriate person who could do that or not, and then they just told you. And so they said to me, okay, you're going to a place called Semarang in Central Java, at a school. It wasn't a school, it was like a university, like in a language academy that was part of a university. It was very similar to a TAFE. For 2 years, and off you go. And I remember my parents saying, we really admire what you're doing, but we just wish it was somebody else's daughter. So that was their way of kind of approving but disapproving at the same time.
They're worried about
Worried,
you.
yeah. Because I was only young. I think I was about 23 at the time. So, so I got moving to a new country, completely new languages and culture by myself. And back then, of course, there was no mobile phones, no internet. I remember living there, and every Sunday I would travel to the local post office that was open, and there was this telephone, and on the telephone it just had like labels with countries on it, like Australia, Austria, Germany. And so I'd go to this phone and just pick it up every Sunday, press Australia, and it would go directly to an Australian operator. And then I would give my parents' number and they would do the reverse charge call, and I'd speak to my parents every Sunday. So that was, my communication back home for 2 years.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So before this, have you ever been outside Australia?
No, that's not true. I had gone backpacking when I was a little bit younger, but it was only like for 2 months with a girlfriend. I did go to Europe, but that was more of a holiday, staying in youth hostels. Nothing like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very brave of you, backpacking. I can never do that.
They say, like, with Australia, because we live so far away from other countries, that, lots of Australians are into, travelling, just because we're so far away. So, but I think too, have you got the travel itch now that you've started?
Well, that I started, I wanted to go every year.
Yeah, of course.
It's so fun, like, getting
Yeah.
to, because the last travel I did was in Indian,
Yes.
and it was amazing.
Yeah.
And then there's a Korean people there too.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So
Yep.
it
Yep.
was
Yeah.
really good.
They say travel, opens your mind, broadens your mind, and is a very good education, for a person. And yeah, I think it is.
That is true.
Yeah, it's kind of like you see how, in some ways, we're all so the same, but we're also different. Like it's you have both of those feelings. I think when you travel and see other people.
Yeah, that's true. Because when I went to India, I don't have my laptop with me, so I couldn't do anything apart from like just be in the moment and filming.
Yes.
So that gave me a lot of ideas. So when I come back, I just get a lot of things done.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that is like reboosting my energy and giving back the energy that I need. And I feel like I need that every year for now.
That's your justification for needing a holiday every year.
Every year, that's it. So what was it like, teaching in another country that do they speak English? And
yeah, so obviously I was teaching English, and the students I was teaching were around like 16, 17, 18, 19 years of age. So they finished their high school, and then they were kind of doing like a TAFE course in tourism, IT, business, those kind of subjects. But they all had to speak 2 foreign languages as well. I often think, imagine in Australia, if we told all of our TAFE students they had to learn 2 foreign languages, they wouldn't be able to cope. And so most of the students were learning English because, English is the international language, and particularly in IT and in tourism, English was helpful. But they also had Japanese, French and Dutch. So that some of the students also learn. So obviously my students, because they also do learn English at high school, were speaking English, and my co-teachers who I was working with, who they're all speaking English, and are all very excited to have a native English speaker with them. So people just wanted to practice English all the time. But then out on the street and in the boarding house that I lived in, some people spoke some English or broken English, but obviously they spoke Indonesian as well, their national language, and also they would speak their actual ethnic language as well. So I was in Java, so people spoke Javanese. But in my first boarding house that I lived in, there were somebody from Sumatra, Kalimantan, West Papua, Flores. So Indonesia has 350 different islands, and so lots of people from all those islands come to Java for work and for study. And so I was kind of in this boarding house with these Indonesians who came from everywhere else. So we spoke in Indonesian and some a little bit of English because they didn't speak Javanese. So yeah.
And do you have to learn a local language too?
I tried to learn Indonesian, and I did learn. I learned enough Indonesian to be able to like catch the bus and talk about, exchange names and what do you do. So all those everyday language. I was able to learn enough Indonesian to do that, but not the Javanese. Javanese was so difficult. So it has 5 different levels depending on who you're talking to. So I would hear a Javanese, and I learnt the common words, and I could say a little bit, but I was not confident in Javanese at all.
So is there like a major difference in the language itself, or?
So completely different languages and different language families, different language roots. However, there are a lot of loan words. So you'll find in Indonesian language, especially on Java, there were some loan words. So and lots of loan words from English and lots of loan words from Arabic and Dutch and Sanskrit. So lots of different loan words. So maybe like the Indonesian, on Java might have been a little bit different to the Indonesian on some of the other islands, just because they had different loan words. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking back, Were you doing it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a really formative experience for me to be, um, let's say, especially as a teacher who was teaching English, to then kind of be in the situation where I was the learner, having to learn other languages and listen for other languages and understand how the culture influences the language. It was such a good learning experience for me that then kind of helped me teach, for the next 10 years, because I was able to kind of remember what it was like to learn. And I understood a bit more about language differences, about grammar, about sounds, about how culture influences language and context is different, and not making assumptions. You kind of don't know what you don't know. And so being put into a completely different situation, I learned a lot of different perspectives. Yeah.
Do you teach a lot of ESL in Australia, or do you mainly focus on the mainstream?
So when I came back to Australia, I actually taught Indonesian language. So I went into a high school, and I was an English teacher. So I did teach just like mainstream English to the students, but then they needed an Indonesian teacher. So I went, okay, I can do that. So I started off doing Indonesian teaching in mainstream school, and then from there I went into adult education. So I think because I'd started my own family, so I was thinking about how to navigate having small children and working back in a high school. But then this job came up teaching adults at AIMS, AIMS Australia, yes. And so I taught English to international students and to people moving to the country for a few years. Yeah. And then a job came up in my local community at a community centre teaching English to adults. And I really enjoyed that, because getting to know adults who were moving to the country, there was that kind of connection to community as well. And although you're teaching language, you're really focusing on helping people to navigate their way to live here. So you're talking about living in Australia, and and how to find jobs and how to find places to live and how to make sure that you can navigate the health system, the justice system, making friends in your local community. And so I always found that really rewarding. And of course, you learn a lot from people as well. So, and get to hear about their journey, where did they grow up? Where have they traveled? Where are they living? What are their hopes for the future? How are their family going? So it's a bit more reciprocal. So, and I really enjoyed community education as well, because you kind of got to develop what you were teaching based on your learners' needs. And I mean, that should be happening at school as well, but it's maybe just a little bit harder to do at school with the curriculum and with younger students. And there's kind of expectations about passing subjects and getting into university. So maybe it is a little bit more restricted and funneled. Whereas, working in the community, you felt like you're able to respond to people's needs a little bit more.
Bit more flexible, you reckon?
Yeah.
So what is it like, teaching outside Australia with in Indonesia in your case, and teaching in Australia?
Mm-hmm. So there were lots of differences in terms of, just the physical space. Our school in Indonesia was not a rich school, and it had been a cigarette factory.
Really?
So it was very basic. And I think I had a blackboard and an electric light, and that was all. Like, there was nothing else. And I had about 35 students in my class, but often the other teacher, and I taught very strict subjects. So I had conversation and reading comprehension, where somebody else would do listening skills, and so all the skills were broken up. So that's very different. So for my conversation classes, I'd have about 35 people, but often the other teacher teaching conversation at the same time wouldn't turn up. So I'd have 70 people, students, for a conversation class. So and no resources apart from, So we did have We did have photocopying, and the photocopying, there used to be those photocopy shops, very cheap. So I could photocopy worksheets. I could create worksheets and photocopy. So I had to always think on my feet, how do I get 70 people talking and how do I get to 70 people? And so I'd always come up with scenarios, get people into groups, get them to, I'd try and make it funny, but also realistic. And then just get around to people and then come back. And so that was very different. So I haven't been in classrooms of 70 students again. that doesn't happen. But also I would say too, students were highly motivated, very friendly, and worked really hard. So it's back in Australia, I guess, teaching Indonesian in a high school. The students, were classes of more like 25. And obviously there was a bit more, technology and books and resources and lots of structure. But, being younger students, maybe not as motivated to learn, and particularly not motivated to learn a second language. So some really are and really like it. And some are like, what's this for? It's no good for me. So, the motivation factor is different. In terms of teaching adults here, again, usually smaller classes, usually people are highly motivated, but also they might have things happening in their life, which makes it hard to focus sometimes. So you have to be mindful of that as well.
Yeah. So can you share a bit about your journey, started as a teacher, step into community education, and now leading in a community college setting?
Yeah. So like I said, I kind of moved from, my Indonesian experience to my high school experience. And then when I had children, I thought I started teaching adults again at Ames. And then I got a job in my local community centre near where I live. And I started teaching there. And from there, they asked me to become a coordinator. And then from there, they asked me to become a manager, education manager. And I guess as an education manager, I stopped teaching and I was looking more at the teachers and recruiting teachers and looking more at the programs and making sure that the programs were fulfilling all the compliance needs that they needed to. But also were meaningful for our students and were engaging with the community. So I did that for many years. And then there was a job going at Wyndham Community and Education Centre. At the time, it was only 2 days a week, but it was a great opportunity because it was working with teachers across 9 different community centres. So the lead agent was Wyndham Community and Education Centre, but it was working with community centres out in Eltham and Reservoir and Melton and Footscray. So I got to travel and meet lots of teachers who were working in the community and developed community of practices with those teachers and trainers. And it was about them getting together to share information and to improve their professional teaching with each other and kind of respond to their needs. So that was really exciting. And from there, other opportunities came up at Wyndham Community and Education Centre. And so it was kind of like my 2 days went to 3 days, went to 4 days, went to 5 days. And I just worked on lots of different community projects over 10 years. And so I was really lucky because I got to meet lots of people in the community and just learn different things. So that's how I moved into the community space. For me, at the back of my mind was always that it's about education. So what's the learning going on here? But it was very different to formal education. So I was very lucky to have those experiences.
So what is it like, be a teacher and then managing a teacher? And what quality do you look for in a teacher?
I think in teaching, what people sometimes don't understand is you need to have both sides of your brain working. You really need the creative side that can be spontaneous and flexible and open and can create things. but you also need your administration side. You also need to be able to have some structure, be able to record things. You do need to be able to read whatever the program requirements are and map that back to criteria. You do need to do whatever the reporting requirements are. And I think, you really do need both sides to operate. You can't be all creative and fun without the administration side, but you also can't be just the administration side without the flexibility and creativity. So, yeah.
Will you say teaching in Indonesia help you develop that skill?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I guess with teaching, I always say you need not just a plan B. So you can have your plan A, but you always need a plan B and even a plan C and a plan D in the back of your head, because things can change on the day. Students may not respond to how you think they're going to respond, or you might have accidentally assumed that they know something that they don't know. So you're having to go, oh, I need to change this now because I have to respond to what they need. So yes, so being that kind of flexible and on your feet, working out. So have a plan, but at the same time, knowing on your feet, you might have to change in the moment. So yes, definitely.
So how do you make sure the thing that you're teaching is understood by every student? Because some will learn visually.
I guess you're always mindful of that students are going to have their strengths and their challenges, and they're all going to have different ways of learning. I believe it's our duty to teach people how to learn differently. So just because you might have a strength in visual learning, definitely encourage that and go, that's great that you've got that strength, but also let them know there are other ways of learning and interacting and communicating as well. And it's really important that you know about those and you can do those as well. Maybe you're never going to do them as well as your strength, but it's really important because you're going to have to work with other people. You're going to have to communicate with other people. You're going to have to understand other people. That's reality in your life, in your working life, in your social life. So you can't be restricted just by your strength. Kind of, know your strengths, but also know your weaknesses, and really try and work on those. And so I think that kind of explicit teaching is really good, where the teacher actually just comes out and says, we all learn differently, and actually goes through the different ways that people learn, the different ways that people remember things. We all have different techniques that we use to remember, to be kind of, open about some people at strengths, other people have challenges here. And working together on those and just normalizing that. But that's normal. Like no one's wrong because they do it differently. It's very normal that we have our strengths and weaknesses and our challenges, and it's more about being aware of those and having our little strategies of how we overcome those.
That's actually very man-opening because I'm a visual learner. So I tell myself that's the only way I can learn. And now, you tell me now and I'm like, okay, I'm thinking like that is true. I might be a visual learner, but I can learn, I can try to learn other way.
Yeah. Well, I did have a staff member once, not now, this is many, many years ago, who kind of told me that they couldn't read emails because they were a visual learner. And I thought, no, you're not getting away with that. Because that's unreasonable that in a workplace that you have to do that for that person, that for that person, that for that person. It's like, no, there's a certain standard where we have to learn certain things, even though we don't like it. Yeah.
That's true. So how has your work in community space shaped the way you think about access, equality, and a sense of belonging in education?
Mm-hmm. I think the thing that actually has shaped me the most was actually when I was very little, and my father. So my mum was actually a teacher. She was a primary school teacher, but my dad was a farmer who left school at 11, and he had a terrible education experience. But he was an amazingly well-read, intelligent man who really was my role model. And I think it was because he was a farmer, but he spent his time listening to ABC radio from dawn to dusk. So he knew all about the world. He knew all about different countries, about politics, about history. He knew kind of like what were hot topics that people were discussing. And so, I'd come home from school and he could talk about anything with me, and he did. He really liked talking. He liked to get my opinions. He liked to understand what young people thought. And so, he was just really, I think he opened my mind to the fact that I knew he had had a bad school experience and he left school at 11. And yet he was probably one of the most, open-minded, intelligent person that I knew, that learning, wasn't just about school. It was about your attitude. It was about the things that you did outside of school as well. It was about being open-minded. And so that kind of concept of lifelong learning and life-wide learning, I think because I had such a strong role model right from the beginning, that was just always in me. So I always look at things as a learning experience. And so I've always been, for that reason, attracted to art galleries and museums and libraries and going to music shows, because I see that as all learning as well. So, so probably I was attracted to community education because of just how I was brought up and my thinking about education.
Yeah. What would you say to parents, especially our current people? Because when we're young, our parents like told us, "Oh, you got to go to school. You had to go to school to get just education to do that." And I know, some kids are struggling and they learn differently. So, what were you saying to a parent who think formal education is the only way?
Yeah. I would say really you need to look at your child. So, how are they traveling? Because ultimately you want a strong, fit, healthy child who's going to be, after they leave school, they'll be in their 20s, 30s, 40s. You've got to look at that person, later in life as well. How do you encourage them to be positive and do things that are going to work for them? Because formal education and university is not for everybody. And I'll give you a personal experience. So for me, I have 3 children. And my oldest child was always very good at school until she wasn't. So she ended up with really bad anxiety and depression. And so it was very hard getting her through her year 12. And so she finally made it, but not with a good result, but she made it, and which was a shock to me because up until year 10, she was a high achiever. And I've always done well. I've been to university. I've got lots of degrees. So, it's just a natural assumption. And also she's a native English speaker. She's lived her whole life. So there's this natural assumption that, your child will go to university. Of course they will, because, they've been educated here and you've been a good role model. But you have to look at the child, and if it's not working for them, it's not working for them. So you really need to work out what's going to work for them. And with that daughter, she ended up just passing year 12, and she tried to get into university. She got into university because it was COVID. So all the ATAR results had gone, scores were down. So she got into university, but she couldn't concentrate. She couldn't concentrate at all. So she ended up getting a job. And because she's a hard worker, they gave her a promotion within 3 months, and then another promotion and another promotion. And now 4 years later, I think she's managing 80 people and has a full-time job and a good salary. And, she's only 24. And, I talk about her job and she's just doing so much. And I think, wow, they've given you so much responsibility. And that's what's working for her. That's what's working for her. So now that she's getting a little bit older, she has started a course now, just part-time. And she will probably do university later in life, and she'll do it while she's working. And work might even pay for her to do some of that. And lots of people do that. They work first, they find out what they're good at, they kind of mature a little bit. And maybe some of those anxieties that they had at high school have kind of passed on, or they've learnt strategies to deal with anxiety. And they're ready. They're ready to learn, and they might get their degree later on. And so, and the ATAR doesn't matter then, because universities aren't looking at ATAR. They're looking at what your life experience is, and if you're a hard worker. That's what they want to know, because they know that's the people they need, you know, to actually do their courses, people who are interested in the course and will work hard. So whereas my other daughter, she's gone straight from high school into university. She's just finished university, now has a big debt and no job. So, you know, I'm sure she'll get one eventually.
Yeah.
But it's just a different way of doing it. So you really look after your child, listen to your child, talk to your child. And also nowadays there are lots of university courses that don't require an ATAR entry. So some do, of course, but lots don't. So look at those alternative options as well. And because if going to school and getting a higher ATAR is the only way, that's not going to work. And then they feel very sad and despondent, like, you know, lack of motivation. They feel like they're a failure. They feel like they're a failure in their parents' eyes. I think, you've really got to look at your child.
Yeah, true. There's a lot of pressure being a child, because I know I was not a grade student. I'm always a C or a D student, like, you know. Finished high school, and then I did go straight to uni. So I did illustration first, and then RT, and then I get into networking and software development, and then I go to film and television. And I went, so after uni, so eventually I go to uni, did 4 years in uni, but I wasn't, like, you know, the best. I was good at, like, what I'm doing, but I'm not good in like books. I'm not a book smart, you know, because all the essay that I had to write, that it's not for me. I passed though, I graduate, and then after that couldn't get any job, so went into fancy, and then Mom, she needed someone in the community, and then I'm like, yeah, might as well, like, come and, you know, do something here. And
that means too that you're a very skillful person. Like, you've kind of got all these skills that people wouldn't even know that you've got, and you never know when you're going to need those skills later in life. Like, and it makes you, you know, a very valuable person to have around, because you've got these different things that you know. So,
what have been some of the most meaningful community project or initiative you have been part of during your time in community work?
Look, I've been part of lots of different ones, so that's kind of hard. It's like choosing your favourite child.
Do you have one?
I love them all. But I guess one of the most memorable ones was a walk through justice. So that one was with the Department of Justice and Victoria Police and Wyndham Community Education Centre. And it was just getting different community leaders from different communities to learn more about justice and to learn about the laws in Australia and navigating the legal system and the justice system in Australia. And it was through meeting with police and then going on tours of different places of justice. So we got to go to Parliament and watch Parliament, and then meet Tim Palace and talk about how laws are made. And we got to go to the Sunshine Magistrates Court and talk to a magistrate there about laws and about coming into court. And then we watched some court cases. We got to go to a police station and see behind the scenes of a police station and talk to police about different things. We even got to go into prisons. So we went into Dame Phyllis Frost, the female prison, and also the Melbourne Remand Centre, which is the male prison, which, you know, even I've lived here my whole life and I never had that experience. And so it was really interesting to go in and meet with, you know, prison guards and prison people. but also just to walk around the space and then to ask questions. And it was great also because it was a very multicultural group. We did it twice, very multicultural groups. And so people, the people who participated, they also said that it was one of the better programs they did because they actually did get to meet and work with a group of people from all different countries. So we had people from India and China and Ethiopia and and Karen and Karenni and different people from everywhere got to meet each other and share their experiences and share their community experiences, and also laugh about some of the misconceptions that they had, and so it was really eye-opening for me as well as everybody else. And so that was a really good project. And we tried to do the same with health and education, but unfortunately COVID came along. So we had to do it online, and online wasn't the same thing. It was still really good because learning to navigate the systems in Victoria can be very different to how they are from other countries. And it's really important to be able to help people to navigate those systems because, everyone deserves the right to be able to access health, justice, education, housing, all of those things. And sometimes that can be difficult. So that was one. The other one was the Wyndham Learning Festival. So I got to work with the City Council with that. And the Wyndham Learning Festival, when we first started, we had a few pop-up schools. And so the pop-up schools, we worked with an academic from Victoria University called Karen Charman, and she has this thing called public pedagogy. So pedagogy is learning, Public pedagogy is learning in the public. So I was very interested in it because that's the kind of thing I'm interested in. And she would go out to communities and meet with people and find out what, because she says, like in the formal education system, kind of knowledge is coming from the government, really, what's important knowledge, But she says there's important knowledge already in the community that maybe is really important to share with others and important not to forget. So it's about going out to community, finding out what's important to them, and then giving community members come to this pop-up school where you can teach people what you know. And so I think it was, in Werribee, we had a pop-up school, and so we had some people from Aboriginal communities doing like possum coat sewing, so something like that. We had Bollywood dancing, we had some language classes, just different things, and so that kind of like community learning. So that pop-up schools are lots of fun as well. Yeah,
I think I have been to some of the workshop, the pop-up school.
Yeah,
and the walkthrough things. If that happen again, let me know because
okay.
I wanted to go because sounds like very interesting. Sounds,
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
What challenge have you faced moving between formal education and community-based work, and how have those experiences shaped you?
I guess the challenges are with the community work, it was generally projects. So with projects, the challenge is searching for money, you're searching for grants, and so you're looking for grants, and so you have to do a grant proposal, you have to do your budget, you work out who your partners are, and it's very exciting, like it's fun, but that can be challenging. And then you're working to, and the project usually is for 1 year, 2 years, maybe 3 years max. So there's a start and finish date. So, which is good sometimes, but other times you think, oh, this is so valuable, like the Walk Through Justice. It would be good to just do that as a program, not a project, like to have it continuing on. So that's the challenge there. And then when things end, you're then looking for new funding and new areas and new partners because you can't continue on because that has finished. So that's that challenge. Whereas with a program, that usually goes for a lot longer, the funding. And now that I'm in a school, it's being funded, by the national government. So that continues on. So that's really good. I guess the challenge in that area, though, is that you have lots of compliance. And so you have to look at compliance in terms of child safety, in terms of how you hire people, in terms of, you know, the building, in terms of, you know, the challenge is that when you're delivering a program, you know, it's a big responsibility. So it's a bigger responsibility than a project, for instance, which is a lot smaller. So I guess that's the challenge. Really, it's just understanding that's what the requirements are and how you go about meeting the requirements and who you need to help you along the way to do that.
What is one thing that you do, you know, in your leadership position that help you to be a good leader now?
Well, one, thank you. I don't know if I am a good leader, but I'll just take that. But I guess it's always you never know everything. So you never know everything. So it's always being open to the fact that what you know and what people are telling you and what people are presenting to you is one story. Just know that there's 100 stories out there, and you just got to be open to all of those stories and working things out as fairly and as possible. So I guess, I try not to be too reactive or too, responsive or, or overreact. I try and listen and
Stoicism.
Stoicism, yeah. But just try and just listen and really get to the heart of things or what's behind things to work out what's going to help in the long run. So,
it's very interesting you say that because like all the time I see you always come and you just get things done, you know. So actually that's really good. I don't know, me in my position right now, sometimes I have to deal with challenges, and then sometimes it's hard, especially in our culture, because now we deal with someone who is older than me, and then it's sometimes they will have a problem, but then it's very hard for me to tell them what to do. But at the same time, I have to make sure I make the right decision. So what advice would you give to me, in making that decision and like not to be biased against who is older or who is more respected in the community?
Yeah. I mean, you would know better than me in your community, but I guess it's about always showing respect and being respectful on all the different levels that you can be. But ultimately, when it comes down to something where it is regarding compliance, because, I'm just making this up, but maybe you're working on a community project where you've got money from the government or money from somewhere to do something, that's compliance. And so you have to do things in certain ways. And so it's about making those expectations very clear right from the start. And, I guess that's saying it's not me, it's what we have to do. It's, this is our obligation. And this is important for the community. This is important for our organisation. This is important for our group. We have to meet these obligations. This is the way we're doing it because we have to do it. Or we have to meet these obligations, and I'm open to hear people's views about that. But then we have to make a decision and then stick to that. So it is tricky, and you're not always, and that's another thing about leadership, you're not always going to make people happy. You're going to make people unhappy sometimes, and that's just part of it. You can't make everybody happy. Again, it's about thinking all the ways that you do show respect and you can be respectful, but then kind of, I guess, deciding what are the key things. What are the key things that you can't really move on, and try and explain the reasoning behind it, because, this is an outside requirement that we have to fulfill, and this is how we're going to fulfill it, and making it as upfront as possible and as explicit as possible. So people kind of expectations. I find when problems can happen when people don't understand what the expectations are. And we all have expectations, and sometimes we don't know we have expectations. So we go into situations thinking it's going to be a certain way, or people are going to behave in a certain way, and then we get really disappointed and angry, and sometimes we don't even know why. And then we realize, oh, we've actually had this expectation, but probably nobody else knew that we had that. So there's no easy, it's hard.
So it's better just to be upfront with them. Tell them the expectation that we have.
And the reasoning why. Yeah.
How about conflict between, people, and then you have to be in the middle and resolve the conflict? What would you do in that situations? Let's make it more complicated. One is your friend.
Oh, one is your friend.
One is your friend.
I guess you have to go to the side and go, look, you're my friend, and I like you and this. However, this is, we've got to go into a situation now where this is not about friendship. This is about this group, and we've got a conflict or we've got a bit of a challenge ahead, and I'm going to have to treat everybody evenly. That's not personal against you. I have to be even. I have to be fair. Otherwise we could all end up in trouble. So trying to explain, and that's what true friendship is as well. Like if someone's a real friend, they should understand when you have a different role. So you've got the friendship role, but then if you've got a leadership role within a certain group, that's the role that you have to play then and there. So, and just saying, I've got these different roles, but now this is my role, and I've got to try and be as objective as possible and treat everybody fairly, and and look at what the rules are, if there are rules. But if it's listening, listen to both points of view, seeing if we can come to some kind of agreement, and working it out from there. So again, it's tricky. If you're in a workplace, it can be a little bit different because there might be more formalized systems where people, and you have a policy and a procedure you follow. It's about making sure people are actually following the policies and procedures, and again, trying not to be emotional about it, and just say to the people, oh, let's have a look at our policy and procedure, because I've forgotten how it goes actually. Let's do it together, and do it together and go, oh, are we actually following this? And then talking about how we should be following it. So yeah.
Thank you. Now that you are working in a community college, which bring both work together, how are you drawing on the experience to influence the way education is delivered?
So the good thing about the community college is that it's a small school, and we just do year 11, year 12, and we do the VCE vocational major and the Victorian Pathway Certificate. And both of those studies or curriculum are applied learning curriculum. So applied learning is just what it sounds like. It's a little bit more applied learning. It's a little bit more doing than academia. So there's still writing and reading to do, but it's always thinking about how do we apply that in the community, or how do we apply that as a physical thing as well. And so I guess, I've found myself working in a school that brings that together nicely, because that's what the curriculum is. So it's a little bit different to the mainstream VCE, which might be a little bit more academic, a lot more reading and writing and essays and things like that. We still do writing, but it might be writing a procedure, how to do something. So or it might be writing, marketing material, or it's something practical that you can apply in reality, in the real world. That's what it's meant to be about. So we like then trying to think of things in the community, and we've got lots of community, connections that we can draw on. So at the moment, this year, Werribee River Association kind of contacted us and said, would you be interested in a project where the students learn more about nature and the environment in the city of Wyndham, but also about the jobs in the city of Wyndham that relate to environment and nature. So it's like, yeah, sure, that would be a great program. So we've been able to join that program with our Year 12s. So they've got to go to different places in the city of Wyndham to learn about different things in that area, but also about the jobs. So about, being a ranger or environmentalist or any of those things, or working at the zoo or things like that, just to encourage them to think locally. And if that is a passion or interest of theirs, that there are lots of different careers and that they can meet some people who are working in the area already and talk to them. So we kind of look out for those very practical opportunities. So I'm fortunate to be working in a school where the curriculum actually promotes community interaction and applied learning.
That's actually very good because you get to learn and experience and see what people are doing compared to formal education when you're stuck in a classroom and doing essay and reading.
Yes.
So that's really good.
Yeah. And the other good thing is, like, because we're a small school, it can suit students as well who perhaps do get a bit lost in a bigger school and don't speak out and don't want to talk to the teacher or don't really know their teachers, or like in our big schools, it suits some students and they love big schools and there's lots of subject choice and things like that. But for other students, they get lost in those systems and nobody knows their name and they don't feel confident to speak out. Whereas in a school like ours, you get to know all your teachers, all the teachers know your name. So everybody knows everybody. And so everyone's spoken to every day. So, it's more likely that people are able to ask questions and feel confident to ask questions if they're not sure about something, or if they want information on a TAFE course or a university course or a job, or how to get a job or get their CV written. And so we can help them actually quite specifically for the individual to kind of meet their goals if they have goals, or to help them understand, what they're good at and what they might like to consider.
What value or principle guide your leadership, especially in a role that sits at the intersection of education and community?
Ultimately, what's always guided me is, human rights. We all have a right to education. So, and I guess that, that saying about, if you teach someone, if you give someone fish, you feed them for the day. But if you teach them to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. So education is a really important thing. Learning is really important. Teaching people how to learn for themselves so that they can then look after themselves and their families and their communities for their lifetime is just so empowering for them. And rewarding, and it's just really important. So you don't want people in the community to be denied an education. You don't want them not to be able to access education. It's not good for them. It's not good for their families and communities. But ultimately, it's not good for society either to have people who aren't able to access their own ability to learn. So I guess, just that. The value of everyone has the right to a quality education.
Yeah, and that is very important because as a nation, our community, if you want a growth in the community, you need someone who is educated to lead, right?
Yeah.
The next question, you already touched on it before, but how do you build a strong and inclusive culture and one that supports both academic growth and community connection?
I think it's about relationships. So really trying to focus on how do we build relationships with students. So if I think about my team now, so teachers and assistant principal and education support, how are we building relationships with the students? Because everybody who comes in there is different, and they're coming from a different family and a different area, and they have different experiences and different dreams. So it's really about are we connecting with everybody? Are we building relationships? Are we building trusting relationships? Do students feel like they can ask questions? And do we listen and do we respond? So really it's just about making sure that we're doing that. So basically that, and the families as well, that we're connecting to the families. So, and we do that. I mean, we've had lots of different families come in, like especially at the beginning when they come in for enrolment or and they look around because sometimes they've had really bad experiences at school as well. Or they've had bad experiences with their children at school, and they feel like those big schools are big institutions that make them feel very uncomfortable. Whereas in our small school, which looks like a community, house from the front, people will say, "Oh, this is so relaxing. Like this is really nice." And so that's really good to hear as well. That people feel comfortable, not just the student, but the families feel comfortable coming in as well. That the building itself isn't isolating, to them. So so it's building relationships, and that's an ongoing thing. It's just like you would be doing community work as well. You can't just build a relationship and then stop. It's constant engagement with your stakeholders. Yeah, it's constant. It's a job in and of itself. So I think focusing on relationships.
Yeah. I think, like you said, the space is also important too, because when I go to uni, I don't even know where my class is because they're like everywhere, like building 7, 11, I don't know, like I got lost. And also, how do you make sure that your student is, being heard and the teacher is trained that they listen to the students?
Yeah. We talk about it all the time. And again, we're a small team and we meet every morning at 9 o'clock and talk. And so we always have a briefing every morning and we just constantly have conversations with the teachers and the teachers will have conversations. I think it's because we're such a small team, we're able to have that feedback. And I think it's important, are we having the feedback loop? We also have meetings on wellbeing, and so where we're talking about the students and making sure that we do have the same understandings. But we also have to acknowledge that some students might feel more comfortable with some teachers than other teachers. So it's just about giving them space to make sure that, that teacher is connecting with them and that teacher is able to feed back important information to the wellbeing team, saying, "Oh, yeah, are you aware of this is happening in the family? Are you aware of this? Is there any way we can help with this? Should we refer this student to, somewhere?" So it's just that constant ensuring that we, do get feedback. Yeah.
Feedback for the student.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is one leadership lesson that you have to learn the hard way along the way? If you have any.
Look, I think lots of different things can be challenging. I think most people would say the most challenging thing is always people, because we're all so different. And like I said, we all have different expectations. And some of those we don't actually vocalize because we don't even realize that we've got those expectations. And so it's, about managing people. And particularly if some people don't get along, it's you've always got to be on the lookout for that and trying to manage that actively. And really, in a professional space, you just have to say this is a professional relationship. We have different roles, and really, although we can be friendly in the working space, it doesn't mean we have to be best friends. That's a different role. It has to be a professional friendship in the working place, and making sure that we understand what our jobs are and that we fulfill our roles and that we're communicating with one another. And again, I think it's just constant, and it constantly changes, and things can happen, and you go, oh, I didn't see that coming. Okay, what are we doing now? And that's just normal. You have to understand that's going to be normal. It's never going to be perfect.
It's got to be adaptable with the environment that you're facing.
Exactly.
In a leadership role, how do you stay connected to the grassroots community work that shape your approach to teaching and learning?
Mm-hmm. So, with the schools, our school's called a special assistance school, and so we have a big network of other special assistance schools all throughout Melbourne. So, there's one in Melton and Reservoir and out in Gippsland, and so we all come together once a term and talk about different issues. And so I'm part of maybe 3 different principal networks. We're working with other principals who work in small schools, other principals that work in special assistance schools, other new principals. And so it's great meeting with those people and seeing how they do things, and talking about any issues and challenges. And so having networks. Also just meeting with your local networks. And so, at the Youth Resource Centre, they have the, Working with Young People network, where all different professionals, some from schools, but other youth workers and health workers come together, focusing around an issue to do with youth. And so we all talk together and meet one another. So going to those different kinds of network meetings and continually meeting people just keeps you up to date with who's around, what's happening, is really important. And I guess having, I'm lucky as well because we work with Wyndham Community, like we are part of Wyndham Community and Education Centre. They are the community. So I've got all those people I can draw on as well. So I've got, the Settlement Services team, I've got the Janubi team, I've got the leadership there. If anything's happening, I've got the Neighbourhood House Coordinator, Valeska, there, and they're all part of the Wyndham Humanitarian Network as well. So any of those issues that are coming up in the community, or opportunities that are coming up in the community, or any maybe help or assistance I need with communicating with families, I'm very fortunate because I can draw on them to connect me or give me the right information or give me the right phone number. And I'm connected. So I've also got that.
I think that is really, really good. So what advice would you give to people who started out, and what is the best way to do it?
You have to be, I guess, part of, there's lots of different networks in your area, and networks tend to be quite open to people coming along. They want people to come along and to hear things. So, but I guess if you're in the workplace, your workplace does need to support it. So, because it is time that you might be leaving the workspace and going to a network meeting. So it is, I guess, about also, I'm lucky because my workplace supports that, and that's good. But if you're in a situation where you have to justify it, it might be a little bit harder. So it would be finding out, maybe ringing up the network and saying, well, what are your goals? What do you discuss? Who are your guest speakers? What's the worth of me going? Why should I go? Finding out what the worth is, and then going back to your manager or leader, whoever it is, and going, I really think this network could be beneficial to us for these reasons, having your justification. And then making sure when you do come back to work that maybe when you have your team meeting, you say, I went to this network meeting, I met these people, and this is what I learnt. And if you've got flyers or whatever. So, quite kind of, justifying its worth.
What advice would you give to educators or young people who are passionate about making a difference in community through education?
Yeah. So, I mean, back when I was, growing up, if you did a teaching degree, that's what you thought you were. Like you'd become a teacher, you'd work in a school. And, and back then, some teachers would stay in that school forever, 30, 40 years and retire. And I come from a small country town. So our school teachers were school teachers forever. Like occasionally we had ones from Melbourne who would come for a few years and then leave. But there was a very, stringent view of what a teacher was. Whereas you can see from my history, it hasn't been like that at all. I've moved around everywhere. But I would say at the same time, always I've considered myself an educator. So I've always considered that. And so, so if I was talking to a young person now who goes, I don't want to do a Bachelor of Education because I don't want to be a teacher for the rest of my life, I would say you don't have to be. Getting a Bachelor of Education is really good because it can teach you about teaching and learning, but you don't have to be in a school. That you can start in a school, then you can go to adult education, you can go to community education, you can travel. You can be part of community projects. You can work in libraries now, like libraries look at education, and galleries, all different, even, like the sporting, like the football clubs look for educators as well because they want to engage with community. So there's just so many opportunities now as an educator to work in the community when I don't feel that there was back, 30 years ago. Whereas now it's considered a lot more usual and normal and something that's actually valued as well. So I would say, become an educator and then work in different spots and see what suits you. And then you can always go back to teaching as well. So
What quality do you think the next generation of educator and community leader need to lead with integrity and impact?
again, I think at the heart has to be that kind of human rights and justice values. Like what's kind of driving you really? Like why are you doing this? At the heart of it, I think that has to be it. Like if you're just doing it for money, I mean that might be satisfying for you, and there's nothing wrong with making money, but I think at the heart of it, if you're thinking about impact, impact for who, impact why, who needs impact. I think, you're looking at quality education. So what's quality education? And so I think driving it needs to be about serving the community really. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess be a teacher, you need to have that passion that, you want to make a difference in the community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there any quote or belief or say that got you through up and down of your career?
I guess one of them was about 10 years ago, before Zoom. I did this online training of these people who were in, I think, Los Angeles or California somewhere, and so it was through Skype. But then I think the visual was through Adobe something or other, and so it was not as smooth as Zoom or Teams like 10 years later. But it really worked, even though, and they were in a house with people in the room like this. And there was three of us, one woman from Netherlands, one man from Canada, and me from Australia who were joining in online. And it was all about communities of practice and about social learning. And the people were there, some were teachers, but some were like from big industry as well. And it was talking about learning in the workplace. And it was really, really interesting. And I remember the facilitator there, he had this thing of, because you'd get into quite complicated theories and quite complicated discussions. And he would always say, at the end of the day, what's the learning? Where's the learning? And not that I knew at the time that was going to stick in my head. But since then, whenever things get really, really complicated, and I'm thinking maybe more about the money or about how logistics and things start to get too big or complicated or a little bit lost, I think stop. what is the learning going on here? Have we lost our way? Like, what's the learning going on? Is this valuable because it's got learning value? It has to have learning value at the end of the day. And if it does have learning value, is that obvious? Can we see it? Is it clear to everybody? Are we measuring the learning value? So I do have this kind of little mantra that does come in sometimes, and it just says, does it have learning? Where's the learning value? Can you see it? Where is it? And that does help to center me again when there's it's a complicated situation. I kind of just go back to the learning. Where's the learning? So, yeah.
What would you say to a young person in your college or in a community who felt unseen or unspotted in the learning journey?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tricky one because I can just say, "Oh, speak up," but if speaking up wasn't an issue, they already would have done it. So it can be really tricky speaking up. I guess it's to find who is the person you can speak to. So sometimes just, you got to look for your people and feel, confident with your people. For some people, that's going to be the parents, or maybe an older sibling. And so you talk to them and go, I've got this problem, or I want to do this at school, or I want to do this for a career, or I want to join a group. And speak to that person and say, I want to do this, but I don't know how to do it. But for some people, it won't be family members. It might be that there is a person at the school who might be like the well-being person, or it might be their English teacher, or it might be somebody, or might be a social worker, whoever it is, or it might be somebody out in the community. Whoever it is that you feel comfortable with, just go, I've got this problem. I need to talk about it with somebody. Can I talk about it with you? And it might not be a big problem, but it might be just like, I'm struggling at school in this area and I don't know what to do and I don't know who to talk to. Or I'm doing okay at school, but I'm finding it hard to concentrate because I've got this other problem with my family overseas, and I'm actually finding it's struggling to concentrate. I feel like I need help, but I don't know. So because it could be lots of different things. Again, at schools, it should be the well-being people that that they're the listeners and they're the ones who know who to refer to. So and they should have some strategies for you as well. Like, have you considered this? Have you considered that? It can be really scary making that first step. And sometimes I think the problem is you don't know what you don't know. You maybe know there's something wrong, but you actually don't know what you're asking for. So yeah, if you've got the person you can talk to, just say that. I feel like there's something wrong or something missing, but I actually don't even know what it is. But this is how I'm feeling.
What role do you believe a community college can play in transforming education for people who have often been left out or left behind?
Yeah, I think we play a really important role for people who, for whatever reason, mainstream schools might not be meeting their needs. So, and again, I think it's because we are small, we're community minded, we focus on building trusting relationships. We're not a big space, so it's not overwhelming. We try and do interesting things, but we also just try and have a consistent day as well. We have a kitchen with breakfast and lunch that people can just come in and get their own food, or we have people cook some food as well. So we allow students to, if they need a break, they can just walk out of the classroom, ask the teacher to walk out, have a break. We work with families, for flexible learning if they need some flexible learning. If they're having a bad week, we understand that. We will check in on them and then encourage them to come back the week after. We really try and tailor it to the individual needs. We understand that not everybody is going to turn up to school every day, do all essays and exams and, you know, and do all of that. So it's really trying to tailor it to the individual to see, you know, what's going to work for them, really. So, yeah.
Just do you have a marking system when the student have to pass at a score, or it's just
So with the curriculum that we have, it's basically a satisfactory or an unsatisfactory or a not yet satisfactory. And we've got flexible learning pathways. So we do have students who start halfway through the year or different times of the year. And we do have students say when they start, they just haven't been ready to come back full time. So they've done it part time or they've done it slowly. So they've only maybe done 1 unit over the year instead of doing 2 units or 4 units. And so we will work with them to do it that way. So they're doing, you know, what's appropriate for them. And then if all of a sudden they're finding that they can do the work and they feel comfortable coming in, then we can give them more work and they can go faster. So we try and be flexible in that way.
if you're not a teacher, what will you do?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because I can't because I've been a teacher, but I've also been education manager and now a principal, and I've been a community educator. I feel like I've had lots of different jobs, and I've enjoyed them all. I mean, when I was young, you know, this is very predictable, but I was thinking teacher or nurse. And I guess my other passion back when I was younger, I wanted to be a dietitian actually, but I was really bad at chemistry and I failed chemistry. So I couldn't be a dietitian, but I was interested in food and nutrition. Not so interested in food and nutrition anymore, but you know, but back then I kind of thought, oh, maybe nursing because that's around health. But even then, I was thinking of nurse educator.
So it's always like education.
So it was always there.
Yeah.
I was thinking more about education and well-being than about. I didn't want to be like an emergency nurse or anything like that, or technical like that. Like I would have done it for experience, but I didn't want to be a midwife or anything like that. I was already thinking about education. But apart from that, I can't imagine. Yeah. I don't think I had anything else in mind. Yeah.
So education is always like there for you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
And how do you always like stand so calm?
I'm probably like a duck. You know, they say the duck feet under the water. It's got and it looks calm on top. No, I think actually people just, I mean, I think that's just me, and it's always been me. So I'm just being myself. And I think people should be themselves because other people are like dynamic and loud, and I think that's great too. And I don't think people should make themselves quieter or smaller if they're naturally exuberant and loud and energetic. Like I think, you know, obviously don't do that if you're, you know, in hospital and someone's sick or something like that. You would change your personality to, yeah. But I think, you know, lots of people use the word authentic self, you know, maybe overuse the word authentic. But I think in this case, it's a good use of the word that people respond to you when you're being your authentic self. And so sometimes when I was younger, I would think I was too quiet, you know, and I'd think, oh, I wish I was louder. I wish, you know, it was more energetic. I wish I was a little bit more crazy, you know. But then I just thought, but that's not me. Like, you know, you got to be yourself in some ways. So, I mean, improve on aspects that you want to improve on. But you also don't beat yourself up that you're not somebody else. Like, be yourself. Like, and try and make the attributes that you have work for you. So, yeah, I would say that.
Thank you so much, Meg. I learned a lot from you, and I appreciate that you come to our podcast. And I just want to thank all the viewers who tune into the podcast and listen to our conversation. And I hope you gain a lot from Meg. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.